You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm your host, Chris Voss, the Chris Voss Show. You may have seen me before. We've been here for 13 years, but unless you're new, I'm your host. At least for, the time being as well, until they fire me or something. Wouldn't that be funny if they fired me at the Chris Voss Show? They're like, yeah, you're going to have to go, man. You're just not working out, man, after 13 years. And then, like, I don't know, they get somebody in here named Bob or something. And I am Bob of the Chris Voss Show. And you're like, wait, that's not Chris Voss, it's Bob. Who the hell's Bob? I don't know. Anyway, guys, welcome to the show. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. Thanks again for another installment of the Chris Voss Show podcast. And expanding your brain, or whatever it was they said in the intro I paid for from Fiverr. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, hit the bell notification button. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. Go to our big LinkedIn group over there, 130,000 people or something like that. Join up on that thing. And the LinkedIn newsletter and all the places we are across social media. Once again, we have an amazing author on the show. She's the author of the new book, Before You Knew My Name. It's a novel that comes out November 1st, 2022. Oh my gosh, we already got books coming out in November. It's getting to be the end of the year. In fact, I think the Halloween things are out. Jacqueline Bublitz is on the show with us today. She'll be talking about her amazing new book, telling us about it and some of the other work that she's done. She is a writer, feminist, arachnophobe who lives between Melbourne, Australia, and her hometown on the west coast of New Zealand's North Island. She wrote her award-winning debut novel, Before You Knew My Name, after spending a summer in New York where she hung around morgues in the dark corners of city parks and the human psyche. We've all seen those dark corners. She did it far too often. And welcome to the show, Jacqueline. How are you?
Morena, good morning from New Zealand. I'm great, thank you.
Thank you.
Had my coffee. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome sauce. It's wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for coming. Congratulations on the new book. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, I am nice and easy. It's I don't know about the spelling, but JacquelineBublitz.com is my website. In progress. And on socials, I'm actually Right Rock, as in WRITEROCK, Right Rock.
There you go. And is this your first novel?
It is my first novel, my debut.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah, I'm still getting my head around it, actually.
And you're a number one international bestseller. So there you go.
That's always nice. That's probably the thing that's hardest to get my head around at the moment, but I'll take it.
There you go. So what motivated you to write this book? We kind of heard a little bit about morgues and different things. Tell us more.
Sure. Well, I was living, I'm a New Zealander, but I lived most of my 20s and 30s in Melbourne, Australia. And back in 2014, there had been a murder on my street.
Murder, you say?
Yeah, murder. It's an endless source, unfortunately, of inspiration for many of us authors. And so I should say the novel deals with the connection that's formed between a young murder victim and the woman who finds her body. You know, the jogger, the dog walker, the fisherman they usually get one line in the newspaper, you know, that the body was found by a jogger, and then we don't hear anything else about them. So back in Melbourne, 2014, there'd been a horrific murder, although, you know, all murder is horrific. But this had been on my street. A young woman was walking to work in the early hours of the morning. She worked at a bakery, and she was chased into my local park. This very busy thoroughfare into the main central business district of Melbourne. Chased into the park, murdered, and her body was found just a couple of hours later by a jogger running a track that I would, with best intentions, try to run as often as I could. And on that particular Sunday morning, I didn't go for a run, but I couldn't stop thinking about, you know, what if it had been me that had come across young Renee Lau's body. I was used to, and I think a fair few listeners would, people watching would identify, I was used to seeing myself as a potential, like as a Renee Lau, the young woman who was murdered. I walked that street, all hours of the day and night. It was just before Uber was, as popular as it's become. And so I was used to thinking about my safety and, it's someone walking too close behind me. But I had never thought about being the person who would, what kind of trauma you'd go through if you were on the other side and you actually found the body. So that's where the genesis that's the origin story of Before You Knew My Name. But that was 2014, so it took quite a while for it to become what it is now.
Oh, wow. So you've been working on it for quite some time then?
Well, yeah. So I wasn't a writer. As in a professional writer. It wasn't anything to do with my day job. I worked in online sales and marketing, and so this was very much a labor of love. Something that I would pick up and put down. There wasn't, as I like to say, there wasn't anybody waiting for this story. There wasn't any kind of publisher or agent or deadline. It was just me and this. What would it be like that wouldn't leave me alone? And I think also it was a way of my sort of like grieving for this young woman. I didn't know her, but there'd been a spate of similar murders in Melbourne after quite a relatively, peaceful period. There'd been a few of those types of murders, and that was my way of working through, I say grief, but also anger and frustration about the prevalence of that kind of crime.
Hi, folks. Here's Voss here with a little station break. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. We'll resume here in a second. I'd like to invite you to come to my coaching, speaking, and training courses website. You can also see our new podcast over there at chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Over there, you can find all the different stuff that we do for speaking engagements if you'd like to hire me, training courses that we offer, and coaching for leadership, management, entrepreneurism, podcasting, corporate stuff. With over 35 years of experience in business and running companies as CEO, I think I can offer a wonderful breadth of information and knowledge to you, or anyone that you want to invite me to for your company. Thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you listening to the show, and be sure to check out chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Now back to the show. Yeah. I mean, there's a horror to it, and there's a life that ends and loved ones that are affected. And, it's a horrible way to pass away. So it's not just a whodunit. This is kind of interesting from the byline. It asks, who was she and what did she leave behind? Tell us more about what that meaning is.
Sure. And so I think of myself as an accidental crime writer, a very lucky accidental crime writer, in that when I started what became Before You Knew My Name, it was very much about exploring this relationship between the victim and the person who found her body. And the way I decided to tell that story was to have it told by Alice, who is our dead girl. Not a spoiler. We know from the first page that she's dead. And so she actually narrates from beyond the grave.
Oh, wow.
We go backwards and forwards. So we start knowing, that something terrible has happened to her. And then we go backwards, we go forwards in it. So it's a book about that really centers the victim, and not just Alice, but then the people that around her that are impacted, and it very deliberately decenters or takes away what I see as sort of some of the power of the perpetrator. At the same time, there is a mystery to solve. There are lots of red herrings in there about who done it. So it's not. That's why we say it's not just a who done it. It's a who was she as much as anything else.
That's really amazing. I mean, that's a great way to take it from that perspective. And I imagine Before You Knew My Name is the title. Mm-hmm. Now, does it interplay from her being most of the narrative, or does it flip between the her and the person who had found her body?
Yeah, so Ruby Jones is the woman from Australia who found the body, and she's 36. She's twice the age of Alice, who's 18 when she dies. And they're really equal and opposites in a lot of ways. The entire story is narrated by Alice. However, she picks up threads of Ruby's story. So there's a little bit of artistic license there, in that she can sort of see backwards and forwards, and has a different perspective on life and death from wherever she's telling her story from after her murder. So we learn as much about Ruby, this woman who comes to. They both come to New York City on the same day. They're both running away from something, and then they find each other.
They sound very kind of similar. They're both on a running away journey and trying to find each other, and then they've I imagine maybe sometimes finding oneself is finding through other people, I suppose. I don't know.
I think that's pretty much what we are sort of striving to achieve when we create these characters and we throw them into these like terrible situations, and also want to say sorry to them. I wanted to say sorry to both of those, both of my characters, many times throughout the process of writing the book.
Now, I think it's set in the I'm quoting here, dark underbelly of New York City.
Well, I love New York, and I see it mostly as bright and shiny. And it was a beautiful summer of 2015, and I came, or spring and summer. I managed to spend roughly 6 months in New York. I say researching, but I was mostly like trying to get tickets to Hamilton and following Hillary Clinton around, like when she was launching her campaign. So, but yes, it's set in New York. It does deal with, obviously some of the less pleasant aspects of life in a big city, the anonymity, which initially works in these women's favor because they are running away, but then what happens when you sort of get chewed up and spat out, and there's nobody looking for you. But no, I don't find New York like dark, and I didn't spend a lot of time in the so-called underbelly.
Okay, there you go. So did you go? You went into morgues, evidently.
Well, I hung around. So the key there with my bio is hanging around or lurking. Is a word that we would use over here at least, because I didn't have any credentials. So, I show up and say, "Oh, excuse me, like I've got this idea for the story." I was wondering what it would be like if I could just come to. So I had met a very helpful law enforcement guy. I'd met him, and he told me, "I'll go down to like First Ave, like you'll be fine." Like I'm like, I don't really think he thought too much about that. So I just went, and so we went, that whole Bellevue kind of like very evocative down there. And then I went to the very austere sort of lobby of the office of the chief medical examiner. And I just stood in the lobby for as long as I could without sort of raising suspicion, which it turns out isn't that long, because I think I did get asked to move along. But I just watched people coming and going, and took in kind of I can see it now, and so I haven't been able to get back because of COVID. So I couldn't even come back and like fact check that I'd had these things right. But it works well because my character Ruby, who finds the body, she doesn't have any credentials. She doesn't have any. The part of the point of her story is you play this integral role in you discover the body. You begin this crime story, but then you're completely removed from it. You don't have any kind of you're no longer a witness, after you've described, what you found and saw. And so for Ruby, there's a scene in the book that's very meta or very method, I suppose, where she goes and stands in the lobby of the morgue and, wants to go down, but doesn't have any permission either. So
wow, there you go. Morgues. That's one place I try and stay the hell out of.
Well, I wonder now
personally,
if they were to, I wonder, I'm working on my second book and another idea for a third, and I wonder now if someone would be able to arrange it for me, agent, publisher, somebody talk. And then, but would I want to? Like, has it been a lovely excuse that I've had no permission, because I'm not actually sure how I'd cope with it. I did spend a lot of time talking with people who work in that environment though, so it's not completely in my head.
That's awesome. I mean, it's the research you have to do for the book so you understand, what a Jane Doe or a John Doe goes through when they're murdered, and it's crazy. What are some of the other things that people might you can tease out of the book? Because of course with novels we can't give away the ending or the middle.
No, and there's such a big spoiler in terms of, letting people know straight up front that we know that Alice Lee is, that she's dead and that she's been murdered. And so, I do try to keep the most of the rest of the book, close to my heart, although I love speaking to people after they've read it, just to talk about, what can I say? So there's a group. So Ruby's quite traumatized by finding the body, and she ends up stumbling across a group of people, small group in New York called the Death Club. They know it's a bit of a silly name, but it stuck, as it did with the author. And Death Club is made up of a group of people who have all had some kind of proximity to death. Like one woman works in a morgue, another lost her daughter in an accident, and another himself had and it's a near-death experience. And they are an unlikely little group who meet at different cocktail bars around New York City or around Manhattan mostly, and they talk about death. Like really philosophical. The thing that sort of changed their lives is death. And so Death Club, Ruby is invited to join Death Club. And so we have a lot of, I guess, not your average crime book. I suppose there's quite a lot of, although what is an average crime book these days? It's such a wonderfully broad medium. But they chat about death each meeting. They get drunk and talk about death. So
it's like Fight Club where you kill somebody and no one's allowed to talk about it.
That's book two. That's book two. That's book two.
That would be a great title for a book if I'm not blowing your title already. Death Club.
Death Club. Yeah. Well. They were a lot of fun, and I lost.
They were a lot of fun.
They were, and then I lost my. I'm laughing now because but I lost my dad while I was putting the finishing touches on the edit that would go and eventually find me an agent and publisher, and my beautiful dad Johnny B. And Death Club, I went back and turned some of those conversations into these really, well, for me at least, feels like the conversations that I wish that I was able to have after he passed away. And so they're not, it's not, I think, hopefully poignant rather than like maudlin or, too serious. It's actually just kind of like, what would I want to sort of sit down and talk about that didn't make other people who weren't going through that uncomfortable, and there we have Death Club. And then they, as often happens in a book, they end up serving quite the purpose in terms of the plot as well.
Wow. There you go. It's interesting how, we can learn so many great stories from life and lessons and spin them into other things. And, sometimes the negative things turn out to be positive in some way, or we can put them as positive, as it were. Is there, we mentioned arachnophobia in your bio. Is there any arachnophobia instances in your book?
No, I would, you're asked to write a bio. It's horrible. And it ruins vacations. I can't go camping, living in Australia. So if anybody, I'm sure that people are well aware of the size of the spiders in Australia. So I spent
that's right.
a good 20 some years in a country where the spiders are, like as big as my head. Well, not really. That's an exaggeration. Maybe as big as my hand.
Not really. I've seen those spiders. They're like small animals. Some of them are like a small horse.
Not even vaguely terrifying. They're terrifying, and they're mostly harmless. And so when you're in the position I was in around writing a bio, and I'm like, well, what do I say? Like, I wrote, I don't mean to play down the fact that I wrote a book, but I'm like, I wrote this book. What do I know to be true about myself? And I said, well, I only really sort of know a couple of things. And arachnophobe is like right up there in terms of what you need to know about me if you're going to spend time with me. So
I can't blame you. I tease a lot of my friends in Australia about the everything there seems to be dangerous and poisonous and
kill you.
Way too large for its size. I mean, even the koalas, I think, have chlamydia. So, I mean, they're not even cute and lovable.
They're like either wasted on their gum leaves or whatever. Or
I've heard that they get stoned and fall out of trees and stuff.
But fortunately, they're very cute, so they get away with all sorts of bad behavior.
Don't get me started on the Vegemite in Australia either. I tease my Australian friends a lot about that. So.
I don't mind Vegemite, but I'm always gives me a laugh when people take like Americans in particular take like a big scoop. I'm like, oh no, okay, you just.
That's what I did when they sent me some. I took a big old slab, put on some bread, and then that was bad. But so this has been wonderful. Anything you base the characters on in your book from your life, or maybe movie stars? Some people think of a movie star when they make a book.
No, the character of Alice, so she came to me. It's one of those moments, and it's never happened again, and it probably never will. And I'm very sad about that. But she came to me pretty much fully formed one afternoon. I was on the Upper West Side in New York, sitting in this little studio. Thinking like, who are you? And honestly, it was like she came and sat down next to me. And there's I don't talk about this often, but there's a scene in the movie Fame, the old school, like 1982, with Irene Cara, and she's this like wonderfully confident young woman who's wanting to be a star, and then she gets put into a situation with a photographer who's taking some pictures of her, and it's not above board. And I'd seen that when I was really little, and it really traumatized me because it was, I understood. So for anyone who hasn't, I'm just assuming because I just watched it again the other day on an airplane. But anyone who hasn't seen Fame, she goes to get some headshots because she wants to be a star, and the photographer is actually a pornographer, and he convinces her to you don't see much, which I'm grateful for, but convinces her to sort of take her top off. And there was that scene always really struck me around what it means to be a victim, because you can be absolutely the most confident, aware, savvy person and still find yourself in a situation, especially when you're that young, where you're being exploited. And so Alice came to me very much thanks to Irene Cara, and that scene in Fame. And then she just sort of took off and told me what she wanted to say.
Those are the best characters from the writers that we interview. I mean, it just comes to you fully developed, and off you go. I never saw the movie Fame, but now I have that song running through. Yeah,
I know. I'm just doing sort of jazz hands. It's really. They had I was on a flight recently, and they had a whole New York playlist, and so I chose Fame, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a really dark movie for me to be watching at 5 years old. Really dark, but it did give me my love of New York City.
There you go.
Along with Annie, which is slightly lighter, and then it did give me Alice Lee. So thank you.
There you go. Now that song's gonna be stuck in my head all day long.
my gift to you.
Yeah. It's one of those songs that just will just catch. Did you ever get to see Hamilton when you were in New York?
I did. I got to see Hamilton, and I didn't understand all what was going on. And I left and went to Sardi's, the sort of famous sort of watering hole, as we would say here, the bar afterwards, and I cried. It's like I didn't understand, and I know I saw something brilliant, but I saw the original cast. Yeah, it was 2015, and so then I listened to the soundtrack, and then fully understood, and will forever regret that I didn't do that first. So I had more of an idea. I mean, I know some American history, but obviously it's a very different take in me. But it was brilliant. I loved it, but I had really, genuinely no idea for a while what was going on. I hate to. Some people get really angry when I admit that. It's like, you saw the original cast. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Sorry.
There you go. Well, I mean, sometimes you get it later. I mean, there's a lot of movies I have to watch like 3 or 4 times. I think The Godfather I've watched like 30 freaking times. And every now and then I just like, yeah, I never know. So there you go. There you go. Well, congratulations on the new book. Give us your .com one more time so people can find out more about you on the interwebs.
Yes, it's JacquelineBublitz.com. We've got this.
There you go. Yeah. And thank you very much, Jacqueline, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. And keep having fun out there in New Zealand, Australia, and stay away from those big spiders, of course.
I will. Thank you.
And everyone, order up the book wherever fine books are sold. Remember, stay out of those alleyway bookstores. You might need a tetanus shot, or you might get mugged if you go into there. So go to the fine bookstores and order up Before You Knew My Name, a novel coming out November 1st, 2022. So there's time to order up for your book club. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. All those places we are on the those inner tubes in the sky that the kids are playing on social media. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.